One of my favorite stories growing up was that of a young newspaper writer who was given his first assignment. It was to cover the construction of a building that was going on in the inner city. And so the editor sent him on his way, and the newspaper reporter was thinking about coming up with a different angle rather than just talking about the building project. So he decided he was going to interview some of the people who were there doing the actual work. And the very first person he encountered, he went up to and said, "So tell me, what is it that you're doing here at this project?" And the construction worker put down his tools, looked at him and said, "For 8 hours a day, I come to this place, I move rocks, and I cut them into some weird shape. That's it." Well, a little surprised at that, he moved on to a second person and asked the second person, "What is it that you do?" And the second person said, "Well, it's kind of tedious work, and it gets boring after a while, but I'm making some kind of rocks here into some shape. It's pretty good pay. I can't really complain about it. It puts food and shelter for me, for my family. So all in all, I guess it's really not that bad." So now he's feeling a little bit better, and he goes to the third person and asks the third person, "What is it that you're doing here?" And the man puts down his tools, looks at the reporter and says, "Can't you see? I'm helping to build a magnificent cathedral." What's our attitude? I think it's probably safe to say that at some point in each of our lives, we've probably had the attitudes of those three workers. Certainly I know I have. But what is our attitude? How do we go about approaching everyday living? Our gospel this morning, Jesus tells a parable about two men who have different attitudes. This time it's attitudes of prayer. The first one is a Pharisee. Now, the Pharisees were known to be a pretty righteous group of individuals, pretty faithful to their practice, and this Pharisee certainly is no different. He's very faithful to his practice, to the very pious practice that the Pharisees had adopted. And he mentions them. He prayed, he fasted, he tithed. But listen again to his prayer. "Oh God, I thank you that I am not like the rest of humanity. I fast twice a week, and I pay tithes on my whole income." I. His prayer is all focused on him. His prayer is all focused on him, not on God. That's the prayer that belongs to the tax collector, because the tax collector emphasizes in his prayer the two important points that the Pharisee was missing. Listen again to the words of the tax collector. "Oh God, be merciful to me, a sinner." In that short, simple prayer, the tax collector points out our complete and total dependence on God. Everything we have, everything that we need, comes from God. And it also acknowledges our true identity. We are, after all sinners. That's a completely different prayer than what the Pharisee prayed. The tax collector was making himself closer to God in his humility. Even the prayer of the Pharisee to go on and say, "I am not like the rest of humanity, greedy and dishonest and adulterous," moves him further away from God, moves him further away from his brothers and sisters in Christ. After all, that's what we are called to do, to be in right relationship with God and in right relationship with each other. We do that when we recognize that everything we have comes from God, And we do that when we recognize that we are together, brothers and sisters, sinners, yes, but able to go to God for his great mercy. I'm quite sure that if we were human resource managers, we would look to hire either that third or the second guy that the newspaper reporter interviewed, based on their attitude alone. I know I would. But we must be careful to make sure that our attitude in prayer is that of the tax collector, to focus on God and to focus on our true identity. May our prayer be, "O God, be merciful to me, a sinner."